Hola a todos, yo soy Rafael Venancio, vicepresidente de Cloud de Fortinet para Latinoamérica y Canadá. Bienvenidos a una nueva sesión de Fortinet Experts. Todo lo que quiso saber sobre hoy acerca del FortiAPPSEC. En los últimos años, la nube dejó de ser solo una infraestructura. Hoy es el entorno donde se construyen y ejecutan las aplicaciones que sostienen el negocio digital. Y eso cambia el foco de la seguridad. La superficie de ataque no está solo en la red o en la infraestructura, está en el código, en los pipelines de desarrollo y en cómo conectamos entornos multinube y híbridos. La guía del CISO para la protección de aplicaciones nativas de la nube es clara. Proteger infraestructura no es suficiente cuando el riesgo nace en el ciclo de vida de la aplicación. Las organizaciones ya protegen redes, identidades y infraestructura. La pregunta es, ¿estamos protegiendo el proceso que crea esas aplicaciones? Para ayudarnos a entender ese desafío y cómo Fortinet lo está abordando, hoy nos acompaña Ben, el director de Product Marketing para el FortiAPPSEC. Ben trabaja directamente en la evolución de esta solución y nos ayudará a entender no solo qué es FortiAPPSEC, sino por qué se vuelve estratégico dentro de una arquitectura de cloud moderna.
Hola a todos, gracias por invitarme. Soy Ben Silverman, Director de Product Marketing aquí en Fortinet. Tengo carrera de casi 20 años en la industria de ciberseguridad, 10 años en la categoría de seguridad de aplicaciones de web. Hablo un poco español, un poquito portugués, pero esa charla la haríamos en inglés. Vamos a discutir temas como las nuevas amenazas, la integración de IA y las herramientas que les da Fortinet. Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta, por favor, la ponga en el chat. La voy a leer y responder en inglés. Gracias.
So just to set the tone, this conversation is intended to be strategic and conceptual. It's not intended to be technical deep dive because we have another session later on with this purpose. But you are all welcome to send questions to us during the session. Once again, Ben, welcome to Fortinet Experts. So we know that most organizations, they're already protecting their infrastructure, identities, networks, but why aren't they protecting internet-facing applications? Why application security is so complex today, Ben?
So the short answer is a great question. The short answer is that they are very dynamic. They are very dynamic. They change all the time. Their release cycles are getting short. We see more and more rapid practices. We all heard about shifting left and trying to protect security from the code, right? And then the challenge of managing access to the applications of different identities today. That's also a big concern. If we look at the chart here, we can better understand that complexity. There are multiple factors that contribute to it, right? So first, there is this whole cloud journey, the migration of applications to the cloud, or the need to protect applications that run in multiple environments, where each environment requires its own adjustments, working with some local tools, if you think of multi-cloud environments or hybrid, right? So it's very hard to maintain consistency of the security policy. Then you integrate other components like software as a service into your app. It's not, you don't have any control of this code, but it does process your sensitive data. So this is one example, right? Then on the other side, we're looking at changes to application architecture, from monolithic to microservices, serverless applications. So there is no web server to protect, there's just a function that runs. And obviously the integration of multiple tools in the ecosystem where data is transferred via APIs. And we'll talk a lot about API security today, I'm sure. And then the last thing here is a lot of web applications today also integrate large language models capabilities or generative AI. And this is another big concern that we will elaborate on later. The last thing is the organization that suffers from a lot of different security tools, a lot of different threats, right? Every week there is a new thing coming out. and then the very little resources or limited resources in terms of money or expertise that they have. So all in all, it becomes a very, very difficult task.
Yeah, you have mentioned about threats, Ben. So, what are the main threats the applications are facing today?
That's another great question, and we can see it also in the next slide. Is that in the past we used to have a web application firewall, right? It was protecting the web applications from a set of known threats. All right, there is the organization that is called OWASP, Open Web Application Security Project. OWASP has created a list maybe about 20 years ago, and they updated it from uh, once every while. And these were like the 10 threats that web application firewalls have to protect the application from. But today, we're not calling it only WAF anymore. We're calling it WAP, Web Application and API Security. We're bringing in to that category more threats and more use cases, such as API, threats to API abuse, such as bot traffic. And you know what it reminds me of, Rafa? If you, I don't know about you, but I remember that when I was a child, and I had to go to the grocery store. So I had a list of the 10 basic things you buy at the grocery store, right? Like bread, milk, eggs, chicken, right? Um,
Cheese.
cheese, right? Farofa. So today it's like so you had this OWASP top 10 list, right? This is what you had to protect for. But today with the API, there is another list of top 10 threats to API. There's another list of 21 automated threats. These are bot attacks. There is this new list of 10 threats to LLM. It's like you go to buy to your family, and one is a vegan, one is keto, one is paleo, right? And you have to buy like a list of 50 different things, and to remember all of it, and to make sure that you're protected from all of it. So this is really we see that complexity in the attack surface, a lot of threats. We see the amount of just by the nature of the application architecture, right? A lot of integrations between interconnected systems in the tech stack, and then you see um, the data that is transferred via APIs, a lot of personally identifiable information. It's a risk. We're looking at bot attacks, and now with AI, it's even more. We're looking at maybe half of the internet traffic, according to some research, being generated by bots, and 25% of the, or let's say half of the health, is malicious bots, right? That are trying to do scraping or credential theft or account takeover and different things like that. So this is why Gartner a few years ago kind of changed it from WAF to WAP, right? This is a Gartner term. But again, we're looking at this expansion of the category because of the expansion of the threats.
Yeah, I like it a lot, your analogy of the grocery store. That's very good and easy to understand, right? We need to remember which everyone needs and everyone can consume and cannot consume. So that's a WASP list. And you have mentioned also about bot protection, right? And half of the internet bots are malicious. So I think that the first step, I think actually the first step is to identify not just the bots, but if it's a malicious bot or not, because some of the bots they make sense for the company, right, or for the business. So it's really important to have that capacity that our AppSec has. And you have also mentioned about API. API is a huge topic. I would like to deep dive a little bit more on API protection because I see that some customers I have been talking lately in Latin America and sometimes in Canada as well, they don't have clarity of the importance of having API protection. How do you see API protection? How can we protect customers' APIs today?
It's a great question. We do hear it a lot from customers, not just in LATAM, but all around the globe. API security
That's good to know. It's good to know it's
is,
not just in our region, but it's across the board.
well, sometimes you're ahead of the world and the rest of the world, and sometimes you're with them. Like in this case, it's a common concern. Why is it a common concern? For two reasons. One is that in many cases, organizations don't know how many API endpoints they have. There are a lot of shadow APIs in legacy systems, right? And perhaps the web application is using some uh, some of it are still connected. Maybe there are some users with excessive permissions that can access this API. So the first challenge is a visibility challenge, right? You don't know where you're exposed. And then the other concern is because of compliance, because, like I said, your tech stack behind the web application, right? The web application in many cases is like the entry point. You get an attack, if they make it through, then they can continue and extract sensitive data or move laterally within the network. But um, because you interconnect uh, too many systems that interoperate, and that's a good thing, it drives the business forward, right? But you don't always have control of all the data flows and the data movements. And then you're at risk of not being not meeting compliance requirements. So it's a visibility issue and it's a compliance concern because you may breach some data privacy regulation.
I see. Good. Thanks for the clarity. I think it's really important. It's a very hot topic inside application security. It's API security. So besides bots that you have mentioned a little bit in API security, what are the common application security challenges organizations are experiencing today?
So maybe just when you I want to say something about the bots because you mentioned something that is really important. When we say bots, we usually associate it with like a bad thing, right? But like you said, there are a lot of good bots.
Yep.
There are a lot of good bots, and it's very important to understand and make that distinction between not only between a human and a bot, but also between human good bot and bad bot. And the AIs, right? Agents are usually good bots because they help us do things. Um, and there are a lot of sophisticated bots that can mimic user behavior. And I'll give you a story that I came across of an airline where bots just went on the website and held a lot of tickets, and for quite a while they couldn't sell those tickets, and the planes were only at like 70% capacity, and they didn't understand why until they found out that there was a sophisticated bot that can create fictitious mouse movements and mimic keystrokes, right? And bypass the conventional security solutions that they had. So this is just one example, one real life story that we need to keep in mind. And then again, when you go to block the bots, you don't want to block all of them because, for example, there are services like Expedia that crawls all these airlines, right? You don't want to block them, or Google crawlers, or some of the AI agents. So it's very important to understand what are the nuances of the bot threats. Now you mentioned, you asked what are the challenges, or what are the objectives for organizations today. I think we can see it in the next chart here, just to give us the context. So first of all, it goes back to the challenges that we discussed, right? Um, the first challenge is obviously security threats, and so make sure that you're covered. You're covered. You're ready not only to protect yourself from the attacks that you know, but you're also ready to protect yourself from attacks that you don't know. Um, Generative AI is great, and AI and machine learning are great for our defense systems, but they're also being used to find new vulnerabilities and create exploits. And they create exploits in seconds. So we saw last year in 2025 the surge in critical CVEs. We saw it starting in 2024, and this is because of the generative AI attacks, right? So be ready. Then the cloud agnostic enforcement, or let's say environment agnostic enforcement. So if you're hybrid, or if you have multiple data centers, if you run your applications on multiple clouds, you want to make sure that you control the security policy, that it's consistent, um, regardless of any changes to the application that the developers are doing. Um, then you want to make sure that obviously the application is available. You want to secure the uptime. You want to optimize the service. So you may want to integrate DDoS protection capabilities to secure the availability, or a CDN. Um, and then, of course, to simplify operations, that goes back to the challenge that we discussed, that organizations, they have limited tools, limited expertise. Maybe they have an expert. Maybe he was 10 years working with a certain WAF, and now he left the company. So what do you do, right? So anything that will make. And by the way, you and I and a lot of us here, we see that on the day-to-day basis. A lot of the buying decisions of organizations are not related with the security coverage. They just pick something that is simpler for them, right? Even if it doesn't provide the full coverage. So every customer is obviously different, but we see that a lot. So simplified operations is always an objective for an organization.
Yeah, good. I like your examples about the bots because I have faced a couple in Americas International that are very similar to the one you described. It was not an airline company, but it was a bus transportation company, and they had exactly the same problem. So they could not sell the tickets, and the bus was leaving empty, not even one passenger sometimes, because of the bots that were going into the system and blocking the seats. I had another one that it was the Justice Department. They blocked all the bots. All of a sudden, they decided to block 100% of the bots. The problem is that many law firms, this was in Brazil, many law firms, they use bots to make updates on the process, right? What's the status today? But the bots make it asks the questions every few seconds. So, but the process does not change every second; changes every few weeks. So they blocked it all of a sudden. They had a big problem because all the lawyers, they were complaining to the Minister of Justice. So it was also a very good example of bot problem. So it's really important, as I said before, to identify a malicious bot versus a bot that makes sense for the business. But you have also mentioned AI already. I was waiting a little bit to start this conversation about AI. And for sure, we're going to have received this question. How do we prepare for the AI area when we talk about application protection, Ben?
It's a good question. We are coming across different use cases. In this discussion, we will keep it to protecting web applications that use AI engines or uh, large
Okay.
language models at the back end. But we can see here on this slide, I think it's number 7, we can look at the impact of the integration of AI into these web applications. And the thing is that the architecture is changing, and once you're introducing new component, new hardware, new middleware, and new software, right? So there is more to secure, there is a bigger exposure, and the other big issue is that most of our security technologies today, they do not know how to process natural language or to how to identify threats in natural language. So you can try and fool the learning model, right? Or you can try to inject some malicious prompts or bypass the security guardrails just using regular language that web application firewall that looks at HTTP traffic will not fetch, or network firewall that looks on the networking level cannot understand, right? We can block based on IP, we can block based on identities, or look at the HTTP payloads, but that requires a completely new approach and a new solution. What we can do, we know that a lot of these systems or applications are using APIs, and also the LLMs themselves are using APIs to make calls to the MCP server, right, or to other, or to the internet via the MCP server. So we can apply the same protections and protect the models, again, to some extent, with the web application and API protection platform that we deliver. We can block the bots and block SQL injections and data exfiltration attempts, and enforce API schemas. Look for by the way, with the thread feed that we continuously update, right? But this is kind of in this chart we see how the application, if you look at the red zones, right? So it was easier to protect all those other components, and now we see a lot of new elements that are being brought in, and we need to secure.
Yes. So now I kind of get it why Gartner has changed it from WAF to WAP because it's getting more and more complex, right? We have talked about bots, we have talked about API protection. Now we are talking about AI. So it's kind of more complex. And of course, it's touching more teams or more groups inside the companies, right? So is it possible to identify who's truly responsible for application security into the companies today? Is there a persona or a group of people?
Well, first of all, it's not me. I'm not responsible. It's someone else, right? This is
That
the
I
answer
guarantee.
you'll usually get. It's not me. It's someone else. But I would say, eventually, each organization has a different level of resources, right? So what we typically see is that in smaller organization, you don't have an application security expert. It's just the in very small organizations, very small companies, it's the IT team or the IT person.
Okay.
In mid ones, it's a security team. Maybe they have a security operations center, so they may be like one security engineer, security analyst. But it all boils down to this, whoever is in charge of the security, because application security is part of your overall information security strategy. In larger organizations, we see that there are dedicated teams that do that, and then there is good conversation and good collaboration. Sometimes there is a lot of tension too. Don't get me wrong, but between the let's say the person who is the in charge of the development and DevOps and the security folks, right? Where when does it work well? When they have an open discussion and they understand and they can agree on the level of friction, because DevOps and development guys, they just want to accelerate the release and this and the updates and introducing new features, and security controls always slow it down. So they have to have this discussion and make sure that there is a balance. But at the end of the day, to your question, whoever is in charge of the information security is also in charge of the application security.
Yeah, and I agree with you that the key is the communication and the teamwork between them, right? Because mid-sized and large organizations that they have those multiple teams, sometimes they're not cooperating, they're not working together, and make things very difficult. But when they have good communication and they support each other, it's much easier and better. But for the first time, you have mentioned about the developers. So, what has changed in modern development in CI/CD microservices? So, what has changed when we think about application security in this modern development environment?
It's another good question. I think there are different things that we see that we recognize. So first, I would say that there are a lot of if you look at application security, let's understand what application security is. It's a very broad term. Okay, web application firewalls will protect web applications and APIs, but these are web applications. So this is something that if you're an IT security person, you will be interested in, because your job is to defend the app, right, and prevent breaches and leakage. Um, but if you're a developer, you just want to write code and release it, and you're told that you need to integrate security into the process. So this is another area, or maybe a few areas of market categories that we call them software composition analysis, like static application security testing, or testing in runtime, which is also known as DAST, right? Dynamic application security testing, and then when you integrate all these technologies, then you have kind of this full application journey from code to production, and you make sure that you're secure all the way. What are the changes that we see in the development side? Well, some of it is not very new, but obviously, once you migrate the workloads to the cloud, then there are a lot of other concerns. You have to look at the security posture, you have to understand who is accessing the workloads, manage the identities and the entitlements of what can they or cannot they do in the application. Did they leave some keys at GitHub repository? There is a lot of things that you need to monitor. We have another tool for it. We call it FortiAPPSEC. We can elaborate on that in one of the next sessions. But it's also part of our cloud security strategy. Then we talked a lot about the risks of APIs because you build a technology stack, you want to accelerate it. There are a lot of platforms that are available to you out there today. Um, if you are using microservices, that's another way of breaking down the application and into microservices and smaller processing units that each one runs a different function. So and developers like it because it's better utilization of resources, especially in the cloud, right? So that goes back to us security vendors, and we have to rethink how do we deliver good and accurate and very dynamic and adaptive security to all these changes. So I would say, and I didn't even mention AI, right? uh, Now I did before, but not to these questions. So this is another thing that obviously complicates um, the whole development side.
Yeah, that's a lot for sure, Ben. And many teams or many different people should be involved in the application security. So I'm thinking loud now, but is it possible to have a cloud security strategy solid if application security remains apart, remains like a silo? I think it would be very difficult, right?
Yeah, it's another good question. I think we can look here at slide 14. It shows us what Fortinet does, right? What is our security strategy? So we're looking at it from a holistic point of view. Basically, we break it down to um, identities, right? Network security, or maybe identity and access, I should say, then infrastructure, identity, and applications, right? So what you see here is that our application security story, uh, we call this product FortiAPPSEC Cloud. It's a cloud-based service. Is not isolated. It's not siloed. It's part of this overall approach. So we have FortiSynap. It does the cloud security posture management and workload protection and identity and entitlement management. So it kind of protects the access and the infrastructure. Then we have the FortiGate VM, which delivers the network security part, and then we complete it with the FortiAPPSEC Cloud. So this way we are providing 360-degree protection to uh, any application that run in the cloud.
Okay, good, good. So today we are not just talking about protecting applications, but we are talking about protecting the digital business 360 degrees, right? So there is a holistic approach, as you have mentioned. But you have also mentioned about FortiAPPSEC Cloud. So when you say FortiAPPSEC Cloud, what are we actually referring to?
So there is a nice graphic here that we can use to demonstrate, but before that, maybe I will just say that FortiAPPSEC Cloud is the evolution of CloudWAF. It's a unified platform that Fortinet delivers and integrates or consolidates all the web application protections in it. We mentioned CDN and DDoS, API security, bot protection. We also have our AI capabilities integrated in it, including the AI assistant, which we can look at. So all in all, we if we look at this slide here, number 5, we can see that we are using AI, or I would say this, the core focus of our product development team behind FortiAPPSEC Cloud and behind a lot of our other Fortinet solutions is uh, leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning based capabilities to deliver better protection. Okay, so what do we do here? We um, enrich and nurture our API discovery capabilities. We said that there is a lot of that this is a visibility challenge. There are a lot of shadow APIs, undocumented API endpoints. So first, mapping all those, creating a catalog, and applying protection. We're using machine learning, our AI, also to protect from unknown web-based attacks. So if there is a new vulnerability or a zero-day exploit, we're able to understand that this is an anomaly, but not just flag it as an anomaly, because sometimes you will create false positives and everybody hates that. But also run it through our FortiGuard labs. It's another um, machine learning based process. We'll not get into the details, but obviously, if anybody has questions, they can ask. Um, but eventually we are able to deliver protection from unknown attacks as well, not only from known attacks, which is very common in the cloud WAF space, by the way. And then looking at bad bots, creating clusters of malicious behaviors, and identifying the bad bots in high accuracy. So this is on the security side, but we also leveraging artificial intelligence on the operational side, right? Um, like this threat analytics tool that helps us identify the more severe threats, sometimes threats that we might have missed and may look benign to us, but it creates the correlation and flags those high priority risks to us. And the FortiAI assistant, this is the latest edition, which is the chatbot that you can talk to, and it will provide you with information about events that may have happened, or help you update the policy configuration settings, deploy the system, add protections, make suggestions. You can look at some bad IPs and so on. But this is all about our technology. Let's talk about the value to the customer, right? So if we're looking at the next slide, I'll just put all this into context. How is Fortinet um, providing value using these AI capabilities, right? So first is with the detection of malicious bots, detection of zero-day threats, and so on, right? Then the ability to evaluate the risk, right? We said there are limited resources, limited expertise, a lot of alerts. You don't always know what to attend to first. You don't know what is more might what kind of incident may have a bigger business impact. So we provide you with that information, and then our customer, can take educated decisions based on the information that we have provided you with. And this way, you're able to make the right decisions, and look at our remediation guidance from the tool in order to eventually reduce the uh, threat exposure substantially in a very short time, right? For example, you can take a decision: do I need now to take the network down to apply a fix, or is it just these two servers that I can send my engineer to when I have some free time, and they will just make that fix over there, right? So this is just in context. We are providing you AI powered detection, risk evaluation, decision support, and remediation.
Excellent, excellent. Very good, Ben. When the conversation is good, the time flies by. So we're already over half an hour. And we have been receiving some questions from the audience. Not sure if they can pull it up. Oh, there you go. From Jessica. How are you currently protecting both your web applications and your APIs? And are they managed in the same platform?
Yes, good question. Thank you, Jessica. So I would say that first, it's a good time to also mention that we FortiAPPSEC Cloud is, like I said, it's the evolution of the cloud web service. It's SaaS, software as a service, but we also have solutions on premise, which we call FortiWeb. This is our web application firewall. It has very similar capabilities with bot protection and API protection in it, and some other security subscriptions. So both of them are managed separately, okay? But like I said, each one of them consolidates the different protections into the platform, whether it's a hardware-based platform or it's a cloud service.
Good. Thanks. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Guilherme, as your applications move across regions and cloud providers, how are you ensuring consistent security policies and visibility everywhere?
It's a great question, and I think that this is the core value of FortiAPPSEC Cloud. Because what happens if you run your applications in different regions? Sometimes you have different privacy regulations, so you have to make some tweaks. Sometimes you have some applications on Azure and others on GCP and others on AWS, and you're using different tools for each one of them. And that will also require you to tailor your application or your security environment and security policies to the infrastructure provider, right? So this is a consistency, or it creates inconsistencies, and not only it creates inconsistencies, it creates security gaps, right? You can add to that the speed of development and the frequent changes to the applications they're not timed between the apps that are running on Azure and the apps that are running on AWS, right? So it's a moving target. If you're using a service like FortiAPPSEC Cloud, then you just change your DNS records, you direct the traffic to us, and we clean it up from the different threads, and you get it back to the application when it's clean, and you can run your business. You don't have to worry about all these adjustments.
I see. Good explanation. I believe we have time for one more, and the other questions we probably need to answer offline. This question comes from Sergio. We are taking a lot of time to investigate WAF alerts. Sometimes they are false positives, sometimes they are benign events, sometimes they are just too many.
Yes, it's a common problem, Sergio. It's a common problem that we come across a lot, and we hear this. This is not new. I will tell you this. I think that ever since web application firewall has emerged into the market, people are having concerns with false positives, and today with the number of tools, obviously you're getting and the number of threats, obviously you're getting a lot of alerts. And I understand why with limited resources all you get is a headache, and it's very hard to know what to focus on. I think it goes back now to two things. I mentioned the threat analytics tool. It's a nice feature, a nice service that helps you do two things. One is it makes correlation between different events that may go under the radar, and you wouldn't classify them as potential threats, but it sees that there is some correlation, that they're probably part of a certain attack campaign, and you want to stop or you want to attend to it and investigate further. So, and then it provides you with some information about the severity of the potential threat, right? So this is one value. The other value is that it looks at, let's say that there is like a policy rule that creates 500 alerts, and just because, I don't know, it is triggered 500 times, right? Um, so instead of looking at 500 alerts in your log, it will just tell you, hey, this is the one thing that you need to fix, and you're looking at one line item instead, right? So it reduces substantially the amount of things that you need to look at. And then when we add to all this the FortiAI Assist, right, the chatbot, it's more than just a chatbot, because there is a lot more behind it, and we can talk more about FortiAI and what do we do with AI and FortiAI on a different session. But I will just tell you that it that is another. It's like your digital SOC analyst, right? In the environment, in your team. It's like a digital employee that provides you with a lot of information about what alerts to attend to first. So this is regarding that second part of the question. The first part of the question was about false positives. False positives is a known problem with web application firewalls. A lot of has been invested by all the vendors in order to reduce them. I can tell you that Fortinet um, operates two machine learning models, right? In many cases, you will see vendors using just one, which is anomaly detection. Anomaly detection creates a lot of false positives, especially if there is a new user that is trying to connect to the application. It's being flagged as an anomaly, and then it's blocked, and that's not a good customer experience, right? We verify, we run another check after we see the anomalies, and based on that information, the clusters that we have powered by the FortiGuard Labs research arm of Fortinet, we're able to classify threats in very high accuracy. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it was a very good answer, Ben. And for me, it's clear why traditional security models are no longer sufficient, right? We need to touch very different aspects of the customer environment, the applications environment, API, bots, the alerts, and many different that it's very difficult for the traditional model to work, as they had multiple products, multiple solutions, but in silos. And now everything seems to be connected from what you are describing. Um, but from your perspective, why has AppSec become a priority now? If it was not before, why is it now?
So these applications are okay. So for multiple reasons, right? I think the first reason is I mentioned that in many cases we see the web app as something that is accessible, right? And it has sensitive data behind it. So in many cases, it's the entry point for a lot of attack campaigns. Then we're the other driver or force that drives that importance is regulation, privacy regulation. We all the websites we interact with, they process our um, personal information, right? It can be emails and phone numbers, and it can be identity numbers, social security numbers, credit card information, and so on and so forth, bank accounts, right? So compliance is another thing that makes this very, very uh, important. And I think the the third point is that um, it, it's just naturally, organizations want to protect their digital assets, and they have they have this responsibility to their end customers, to their individual users like yourself, myself, everybody here in the audience.
Agree, agree. And as we are talking about AppSec, but of course, cloud security is impossible to don't think or don't imagine CNAP, right? So what's the relationship between AppSec and CNAP, or for CNAP?
Yeah, I think we looked at it a little earlier. They complement each other, right? If you run your applications in the public cloud and um, users can access these applications from everywhere. Some of them may be internal, some of them may be external, maybe your customers, right, or business partners. CNAP helps managing the access to the application and make sure that nobody gets excessive permissions and monitor the attack path or possible movements um, to give you visibility into your security posture overall, right? So you can look at our cloud strategy like this, all right? We we're doing we're using CNAP or some CNAP capabilities with our 40 gate VM, the firewall, the virtual firewall in the cloud to keep the attackers out, right? We can enforce more capabilities. We have obviously a lot of other products, but I'm focusing now on CNAP and AppSec. If one of them by chance got in, then we are blocking them before accessing the application with FortiAPPSEC Cloud.
Yeah, excellent. Well, as I said before, Ben, time flies by. We need to get to the end of our conversation today. And to close this conversation, I would like your advice, right? What would be your piece of advice for organizations or CISO that they are starting or reevaluating their AppSec journey? What would be your recommendation?
So I think that I would say three things. One is connect to your organization business goals. Understand what are the business objectives, right? Not just the technical challenges that sometimes we technology people try to look at and give it too much importance. Understand the bigger picture. The second thing is connect to your development teams, the DevOps, and other stakeholders to make sure that you get the budget and priorities right, and you get the buy-in from other influencers that may intervene with your security decisions. And then the third thing is learn the compliance, understand where the market is going, to make sure that you don't leave any of your customer or yourself basically eventually exposed to a potential risk.
Excellent. So today we understood why application security has moved beyond being a development only topic and has become a strategic pillar of cloud security. In our next session, we will expand this conversation and demonstrate how these capabilities integrate into a broader cloud protection strategy. For those evaluating CNAP strategy, we will further explore how AppSec fits within that architecture. Unfortunately, we are on top of our time, Ben, but I would like to thank you a lot for this time, for this conversation. I think it's very helpful to have this global visibility, global view of what's going on around the world regarding application security, application protection. We appreciate your time. Do you have any final comments for the audience?
I want to thank you for inviting me, and thank you to our audience for spending their precious time with Fortinet. And if you want to learn more, please go to our website, download some of the available content here after the session, reach out to one of our local experts. And again, thank you very much. Looking forward to the next
Thanks
time.
a lot. Excellent. And we also answer the questions offline, the ones we could not answer online. Once again, thank you, Ben. We waiting for you down here in Latin America.
Próximamente.
Um abraço.